Introducing the ultimate seat cover, Tiger Tough. Proudly made in the US of A, waterproof and backed by an unconditional warranty. Yes, you heard it right. 2 years on vehicles and a lifetime guarantee on heavy equipment. They have you covered for manufacturer defects, normal wear and tear, and even those oh shit moments. Tiger Tough covers are meticulously crafted for a perfect fit with over 30,000 pre-fit designs, ensuring they stay in place without any shifting or sliding. Plus, they're even machine washable. Don't settle for less. Get a seat cover today that's built to last. Order today at tigertough.com/dirt. Get a free logo embroidery on your first order if you use the code DIRTBAG at checkout. Once received, show us your new badass seat covers with your logo and tag us. Experience durability and quality with Tiger Tough seat covers. Toughness guaranteed.
All right, what's up, you dirt bags? Mr. Luke Payne in the studio. How you doing, man? It's good to see you again.
Good, man. Cheers to you. What are you having tonight?
Oh, I've got that last of that bad birdie batch.
Good for you.
Golden Ale,
I don't think I can drink any of those, so I'm glad you are.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but doesn't beat a Coors Light, unofficial sponsor. So
Yeah.
we'll get there one day.
Coors Light, the unofficial sponsor. Yeah, man, I have not had a beer in a while, so I was like, I'm gonna have one tonight. Tonight is a good night to have one. I mean, it tastes great, so it's good to be back.
Yeah. We've been recording quite a bit. I know we've got some episodes stacked up here. You and I were just talking about some new and improved potential changes with the podcast, potentially some more episodes coming down the wire here. So just keep your eyes peeled. We might increase the frequency, but Luke, I think it's just everyone's been super helpful with giving us feedback, giving us questions and topics. So like we don't want to sit on it and wait. So we might be pumping out some more episodes here.
Yeah, good to pivot a little bit, and it's fun to see where the need goes in the business, and I'm like you, I'm anxious to see what happens with it. So
yeah. So the real reason why we're here, a lot of times people listen to us just rant against each other, but we've got a very special episode.
We do.
Very special guest. You and I've been talking about this for a while, getting him in. He's had quite the bumpy last few months here, so I can't believe he's even sitting here in studio with us. But I feel so grateful to have Mr. Benjamin Holmgren in studio. Cheers, man. How are we doing? How are you feeling? Welcome to the show.
I got my coffee.
Cheers to you, man. Thank you for taking some time with us. Like Luke said, it's been an eventful, I don't even know, like year for you, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for making this happen, guys.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. Like Luke said, we've got some really fun questions, just kind of diving into it right away. Ben, you were at BuildWit for how long? I can't remember.
3 years.
3 years. Okay. And you are now, I shouldn't say broken off, but basically parted ways, and now you're doing your own thing, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I had a couple months to sit in the hospital this winter and stare at the wall and think about my future and what I really wanted to do. And it was like, wanted to do my own thing. I have that got bit with the bug, and that's now we're here. So
yeah. So let's talk about that, because most people know you by now, especially that listen to the show. If you don't know him, go search Benjamin Holmgren on LinkedIn. You'll be amazed, and give him a follow. But
really good insight.
Very, very good insight. And so, we met obviously through LinkedIn, and we know you through BuildWit, and then kind of followed the whole journey. And I got to meet you and see you at Dirt World Summit. And so that was last August or so, I believe. And so got to meet you in Houston. I want to hear, before we dive into what's next, because I know that's a big story here, I want to hear a bit about the lead up into the Dirt World Summit and how much work that must have been, because events in general are insane, but a first time event and doing it how big you guys did, how was that for you? And I just want to hear more about that.
Yeah. For context too, I'll just fill in the unanswered question, which is, I said kind of why I left BuildWit, but just please know, I'm not only on good terms with them, like it was very amicable. I
Mhm.
just had to go do my own thing. It was time.
Cool.
And I'm not only friendly, but we continue to do stuff together, and I'll be at their event in a month, and like just really, really good relationships. And I'm very grateful for it. Like
For
a lot
sure.
of times those kinds of things, every business, everybody has this issue, you know? It's like if every person listening to this probably has somebody who has ended up going on their own or whatever, and
Yeah.
you have an opportunity to get angry at each other and not talk for months or years, or you can continue to collaborate. And I'm very grateful that the Build guys have been very, very good to me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
it's been awesome.
Shows the maturity, because I feel like there's always, I shouldn't say always, there's cases where that doesn't happen, but more so than not, there's a lot more haste. I feel like from departed people from companies, and it's like, why is that? Dude, is it on the owner's part? Is it on the person leaving's part? Like, how does that play out? But yeah, I've never understood when you leave a job, you automatically have something bad to say about them. So it's refreshing to hear like
Yeah.
great relationships still, all that. I love that.
Yeah, and another point to that too is all three of us sitting on this podcast, we're all self-employed. So we had a job at some point that we left, and I had a great relationship with my boss, and I still do. And yeah, Luke, to your point too, it's like I don't know why sometimes that does happen, but yeah, Ben, it's good to hear that you're still going to the events too, and because really the mission stays the same, right? And
Hmm.
make the dirt world a better place. That can't just be them, and that has to be all of us, like they've said many times. So, um, but yeah, man, going into Dirt World Summit, I know
Yeah.
you kind of spearheaded that too. Uh, how was that whole process? And then tell me more about that.
So in just about or a little over a year ago, they kind of cooked up this idea for this summit. Like, let's go blow the doors off and make this thing happen. They talked about it. We had talked about it for a year or two, and it was like never the right time. It's a huge risk.
Yeah.
Like, it's a multi-million-dollar risk.
Mm-hmm.
And if it bombs, it's no good. And so it was kind of like, once we go all in and commit to this, and you sign this hotel room, this block of 300 rooms, 400 rooms, you sign,
Jocko.
You're
yeah,
there.
you get Jocko.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you could have bought some houses or do this event, you know?
Right.
And it's like, it's got to work. So a little over a year ago, myself, and one other guy from the team over there, Clay, we were like on deck to go
Cool.
build the event. And we needed the sponsors and we needed the attendees. So 60 sponsors and 800 attendees.
Cool.
So go.
Was it hard to
And
get the sponsors for that?
was it hard?
Yeah.
It was surprisingly easy. And I
Wow.
think it's
Good.
because like it wasn't just so simple, just send an email and everything goes, but it was a very expensive event compared to going to your local trade show
Yeah.
or whatever. It was
Mm.
extremely expensive. Plus you had to fly there, you had to, bring your team, all this stuff.
Yep.
But it was such a narrow set of companies,
Yeah.
and the kinds of companies, not just dirt companies, but dirt companies that prioritize people, like so much so that they'll spend thousands in order to be at this kind of event.
Cool.
So it was like it was a very, very specific audience. And so it was like hard enough, I suppose, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like backbreaking to get these sponsors. But to get 800 people to leave their office and fly, we had people all over the US. We had a bunch of Canadians. We had multiple people from Australia fly here to Houston to be at this event. Psychotic. It's crazy.
That is
Uh,
crazy.
to fill 800 seats at whatever it was, $2,000, $2,500 a
Mhm.
ticket.
Mhm.
It's a lift. It's a
Mhm.
huge lift. And I spent, you're asking about my lens on it, my experience.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody about this recently. That 9 months was like, it was the same. I had to go into the same mode as I go into for running these ultra marathons. Like,
Mm.
this is going to be fun for the first couple miles. It's exciting. Yeah, this is what we're doing. And then there's this impending deadline that you have to hit, or we're going to like go out of business.
Right.
Go. And it was like, Roger that. So it was every single day, just like calls, emails, texts. Next day, same thing. Next
Yeah.
day, same thing. 9 months later, same thing. Reached out to more companies, and obviously we had tons of support from the team. We had a ton of support from the industry. Very grateful for everybody's like getting and rowing along with us. But for the 780 people or whatever it ended up being, like it was right around our target, and it was a miracle, but it was also a huge relief.
Once
Yeah.
it was
For
done.
every one of them, there was 15 that either told me to kick rocks or never responded, and that's how it was. And it was like,
That and that's kind of
welcome to
what I
Scott.
was looking for too, because you don't just get 800 people to come and all these sponsors from the first 800 calls you make. And so I can't
No,
even imagine like
thousands.
15 telling you to kick rocks and you're like, man, this kind of sucks. But
Are you kidding me?
everyone, you got to go through it though, right?
Yeah.
Yep. But it's no different. I've thought of this many times. It's like that season or that period, that 9 months, it was just like hard every day. And like harder than others, like a lot of other stuff. Like you have your job, and you do your job, and then you quit and leave or whatever. This was like, it felt like this massive deadline, this massive cost if we missed, and it was all resting squarely on my
Right
shoulder.
on your shoulders.
And it's like, this must be, in a little way, at least, this must be what it's like to have a company. Like, you know, Luke, I mean, both of you probably feel this all the time in some sense, you
Things
know?
get stressful. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Was that kind of like a push to you to where you're like, I did this. I think this is now the right step to go out on my own. It was that kind
Good
of like a
question.
builder to it. You know, you thinking you have 9 months to do this project. In my head, I would be thinking, okay, if I can do that, and if I'm
Yeah.
working for somebody at that point, I could probably do my own thing.
It's like it's two parts. So yes. And I'll tell you, I flew to Houston a couple days early, before the event. I got there, took the Uber, went to the hotel where the event was, dropped my bags in my room, and then went over to the event hall. And they were like halfway done setting up. They were working on the stage and stuff. And I'd mentioned Clay earlier. He and I went and really helped. Like we were the guys on this
Yeah.
project. And we went in, like he was like, "Hey, I got something to show you." And we go into the hall where all the tables and chairs are set up. And it's like, if you haven't been in a room of 800 chairs, it's like big,
Huge.
like takes you a while to go across. And he and I just stood there, and it's kind of like, this is your half, this is your half, like
Yeah.
That's
mission
my baby.
accomplished. And it was so like it was like a 2 minute little deal, but it was so tangible, so like uh visceral. To be
Yeah.
like,
We
9 months
fucking
of
did
work
it.
is this right here. It's
Let's
like
That's
go,
exciting.
baby.
crazy. So, but to answer your question, Luke, absolutely. It was like a huge confidence thing
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And the second part of that is also, like, the advantage was, do you know how many contractors I got to talk to? Like, I
Mhm.
was perfectly placed to talk to a ton of contractors. And yeah, I'm decent at saying hey and build a relationship and let's chat. And like, that's maybe some of my more natural ammo in the first place.
Yep.
But there was lots of days I didn't feel like it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tons of days, most of the days. But it was like, I got to build relationships that I have today with so many contractors.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just a huge, huge blessing
Yeah.
in hindsight.
Yeah, I love that, dude. And a lot of people that listen to our podcast, actually, one of the reasons Luke and I started was if somebody wants to start a business, they can listen to our show and be inspired, but also have the resources to know how to start. And so that's why we're excited to dive further into your story, because it's so fresh and so real. However, you're 29 years old at this time and you run every single day like a madman. I mean, ultra marathons, everything. One of the healthiest guys I would say that I know. And you leave the show, you leave Houston, and you guys go on a trip. Was it a vacation, or what happened after that?
So the summit got done the 30th or 29th of October. I flew home. We went to the wedding on Saturday. So I flew home Friday night. We went to a wedding on Saturday, and then my wife and I took off on Sunday to go to like southern Utah for our anniversary, our 10th anniversary. So it was just going to be sick. It was going to be not just, you know, an anniversary trip, but it's this like huge sigh of relief after 9 months of sprinting.
You got married when you were 19?
Yeah, yeah, some
Good for
math.
you. I was just doing math in my head. I'm like, wait, Luke just said you're 29, 10
Yeah.
years. I'm like, damn, hell yeah. Good for you. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, yep. It's that's a true story.
Cool.
So yeah, so we did like some hikes and stuff the first day. And the second day I woke up and I was like my vision was super off. And I'm like trying to blink and trying to get it, you know, it's early, trying to get squared away, and I can't. Like it's like I see everything normal, plus out of another eye I see everything at 30% kind of shifted. And I like try to walk into the bathroom to take a shower, and I'm like having to hold on to the walls because I'm like I'm gonna fall over. And my wife's like, "You good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I'm fine." I take a shower kind of haphazardly. I'm like, I'm gonna Google and like try to see what's up. And I like try to type on my
WebMD.
phone, and I like close one eye and I can see what I typed, and it's like 50 characters of just random gibberish. And she's like, "Yeah, I think we should bring you in." So we walk down. I'm like clutching onto her. Like we walk down, go to the truck, drive a couple minutes out to the hospital, and yeah, long story short, after like an hour, they come back. They're like, "Yeah, you had a stroke while you were sleeping, and we're gonna have to check this out. So you might as well just get comfy."
Wow.
It was crazy. Um, so yeah, we spent the next 2 days there. I went in more MRI machines and little missile capsule things than I can even remember. Just totally crazy. But over the next day and a half or whatever, I kind of started coming to.
Yeah.
I started getting my vision back. Like things started tracking a little better, and they were able to let us go. Like we had to get to the airport and take a flight home, and we were able to that next night. But it was a crazy experience.
Yeah.
So you're 29 and you have a stroke. I feel like myself and most people are wondering like what happened or how, especially with how healthy you are. Like, did they find out, and kind of leading into it?
Yeah.
But how does that happen?
So I'm no doctor, but there's you have two chambers in the top of your heart. And I have, well, all of us when we're in the womb, we have a hole that goes between the top two chambers, and it's for I don't know, some kind of like blood circulation or whatever.
Some doctor word or
Some
something.
doctor or something
For
or
sure.
other. Well, most of us, that hole seals up when we're born. Like after we're born, the first 6 months, that hole seals up and it's a non-issue. And mine never did. And so it's called a PFO, patent foramen for any doctors on the line. And basically what happened is a blood clot got from one side of my heart into the other. And instead of going out through my lungs like it has for almost 3 decades, it decided to go up to my brain and started melting my brain. And so
Jesus.
that's why the stroke. So I
Wow.
had to wear a heart monitor for a month and make sure there's nothing else goofy going on. And then 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I got the operation done where crazy. They didn't have to cut me open, but they went up through my leg or groin, basically to put a camera up one side, like through a artery, and then they put a tool up through the other side. And they basically put this like little mini Oreo cookie thing that goes into that hole between
In
the
your
two
heart?
chambers in my heart, and it kind of like seals up that hole, and then over time the heart will grow in around it. And so that's what happened, and it was psychotic. It's crazy.
Dude. So I got
The
a
medical
question.
field freaks me out.
Yeah, that's
It's
insane.
wild.
we
Damn.
got a lot of questions here, but my question, like with the blood clot going up to your brain, is that something that goes away or is it like still up there?
My brain.
Well, the brain is, I hope, still there, but the blood clot, like, or is that
Yeah,
just
what
kind of
happens?
clear out?
Yeah, yeah, to my understanding, and maybe it melted the part of my brain that remembered that, but uh it's your brain has to your brain's always making these synapses or connections.
Uh-huh.
And so they showed me this basically MRI of my brain, and it you could see like the little white spot almost in the middle, right on the right side, little white spot where the clot uh ended up and was
Wow.
melting the
Oh,
brain. And so over the last, like the first month, 2 months, I was not normal. I was not like I am right now. Like I'd really have to think through things. Like
yeah.
I'd have to,
Did,
before I could chat with you, like
yeah, did
crazy.
you, because you and I jumped on a call, but I thought you were good. Did you have any like meetings or conversations with people where you had to preface that like I'm not fully myself?
Well, not to get too far or get ahead of us, but
Sure.
10 days after that happened, we went into the hospital with my wife at 23 weeks pregnant.
Hmm.
And I kind of had like 2 months of pretty quiet. I really didn't do much. I remember my first meeting, like work related meeting, was like a month after
Mm.
my stroke. And I remember being on that meeting in the hospital, with my wife, and like I'm like, I cannot get distracted. I have to focus on every single word that this person is saying,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna be cooked goose.
Wow.
Yeah, it was
I
wild.
can just imagine the mental tax that you carry with that. Holy shit.
Hmm.
So, and that's a big piece too. So that's huge that you literally just had a stroke and 29 years old, but then, like you said, 10 days later, you and your wife go, and you're expecting, go into the emergency room because she's not feeling well. And
Yeah.
how far in was she at that time?
So babies are supposed to be born at 40 weeks. She was at 23. So she's 17 weeks early, barely over halfway.
Barely
And
just found the
like,
gender out.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yep.
You find the gender at 20 weeks,
Hmm.
unless you do
Wow.
genetic testing. But yeah, Riley, that's crazy. She's 13. We're expecting another one here, and she's 13 weeks here. So I just can't even like put to words like if we were to, yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. This is not scientific, but 10 out of 10 do not recommend.
Yeah. I think that can be scientific because
Hey,
that's
can
a
we fact
fact.
check that?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, holy shit, man,
Yeah.
you've had quite the ride.
Yeah. We're very thankful, but it was hard. Like it's
Yeah.
been very hard. So, uh, I know this podcast isn't about preemie babies or strokes or whatever, but this is my life. And what happened was we were gonna go on this date Friday night. Yeah, let's go on a date. She's like, yeah, I let's swing by she was gonna go to urgent care, but they were closed. She's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll just go by the hospital and just have them check me out. There's some stuff going on. And an hour later, they're calling an ambulance at the hospital, like, hey, you're gonna be headed in and you're not going anywhere until baby comes because you're like
Wow.
baby's coming out, whether you like it or not. It was like, Roger that. So 3 weeks of bed rest. She didn't move. Like she was just there. It was like probably the most scared I've ever been. Like the second night, third night, they give all these steroids and all this medical stuff to try to keep baby in. And the second night we were there, like wake up at 3 in the morning. There's 10 people in the room. They're shoving all these carts in and lights and everything's just crazy. And I remember just laying like I'm on the little,
The little
bed on
chair.
the side. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember like I couldn't get up. I was like just shaking, like uncontrollably shaking because I'm like, baby's coming and I don't think baby's gonna live, you know?
Yeah.
And very thankfully, baby didn't come that night, and
Yep.
didn't come for another 3 weeks. And that 3 weeks was like the difference of
Wow.
of yeah, something at least way worse happening. That 3 weeks mattered more than anything.
Was she in
So
the hospital all 3 weeks?
yeah, she
Yeah.
she
Yeah,
barely
she
got
was.
out of bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What not to switch gears, but like how was it with your other kids? Who, because like being in the hospital, you can't, I mean, obviously, because what do you have? 5 now?
We have 7 now, so
Se-
yeah, we
se-
have 6 at
7
home.
now. So
Yep.
you had 6 at the time. What were you like, hey, the babysitter, you're gonna have to stay a couple days until we figure out what grandma and grandpa are doing or
Yeah.
something. Like that's where my head goes, because I'm like, if that were to happen to Riley and I don't know what we would do because our parents are always in different areas and wild.
Yeah. Yeah, we're so fortunate. We have like such a strong support system. I never really appreciated it nearly as much until we needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's unreal. But yeah, my wife's sister and brother-in-law, they came by the house. They're gonna watch the kids while we went on our Friday night date. And they were right in the middle of building a home, like just down the road from us. And they had just started on that, and they were, living in the camper or whatever. And we went in and we're like, yeah, you're gonna have to stay with the kids tonight, and for the
Okay.
next night and for the next 4 months.
Yep.
But it worked
Wow.
out amazingly. Like we brought baby girl home a few days before they were able to move in, and just the timing of it worked out super well. But yeah, very, very supported, but it is could not have done it without everyone.
Crazy.
Mhm.
Crazy.
So now your wife, baby, everyone's good.
Yeah, I'm just very, very thankful. Like
Wow.
it's hard to communicate how thankful I am. Baby's
Yeah.
home,
Wow.
sleeps good, like is healthy.
Good.
I'm healthy, my wife's healthy. It's just like, yeah, it's pretty unreal to
Man.
look back, and even this conversation, like realizing like what we went through is no joke. And we were a half an inch from a lot more terrible things happening, and they didn't. So very, very thankful. God's watched over us.
Man, yeah, all glory to God. I feel like you just get so close in your faith during times like that, and so grateful that you guys are okay today, and from what everything you guys went through. So now, because obviously, I just can't even imagine, for one, your headspace you have to be in during all of that.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of shook some things up. Was it, if you could walk through with Luke and I and everyone listening, what you were thinking when you're like, I want to do my own thing now? Like there's all this stuff that just happened. Like what was that urgency like? Why did you feel that way? And like what were some of those thoughts that you had of starting your own business?
Like I said earlier, I had kind of 2 months, the first 2 months. So my ideal bed rest. She was born, baby girl was born. She had the first month or so in the NICU. She had a lot of ups and downs, had some pretty spooky times there too. Like you have a 1 pound, 13-ounce baby who forgets to breathe, and they have to intubate her. And there's just like a lot of stuff going on there. But um, I've thought about it a lot, because it's like we're talking about this on this podcast. I'm sharing these things that happen, these kind of like highlight things. But there's also like every single day in that time, there was someone who had to get lunch for people. And there
Right.
was, and I was trying to work out, and there was a little gym in the hospital so I could go down and do a run or whatever. And my wife needed stuff from the store. Just like there's all these details in normal life stuff that still has to happen, whether you have terrible things going on or not. And so I had 2 months to sit and like I said, stare at the wall and think about, like, I wasn't focused on like, okay, got to get this work done, got to do these things. It was like, I'm just trying to breathe here
Trying to
and
live.
trying to live and get some clarity. And and the reality is like I've thought of doing something on my own for a long time, but never maybe had the confidence, never knew what I was going to do, never had courage, whatever it is. And in that, like it'll sound trite if I say it, but it's like in when you go through something like that, it was like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, it's
Dude,
not this.
100%.
you know?
Almost like anything is easy based compared to
Yes.
what you just did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. And that was my like rally cry, you know? He's like, okay, well, now or never. In the words of the almighty philosopher Larry the Enticer, we're just gonna send it.
Just gonna send it. And you did. And you did. Hats off to you
Dude,
for doing that, man. I mean,
man, it,
fuck.
yeah, that is awesome. And I just, everything happens, and so now you start this business and you're like, okay, yeah, what was I nervous about before? Now does not matter. It's like, I want to start this. Why not start? I'm 29 years old. Like, what's the worst that can happen? And so you start this business, and I'm super curious how you came up with the name and then what you're going to be offering. Like, how did you come up with that? Because it was a piece of what you were already doing, but walk me through that.
So the name of my company is Kestaa, which is a Finnish word. So Luke, we share Scandinavian heritage.
For sure.
My dad's half
Eggebrat.
Norwegian or whatever. So let's go.
All right, you dirtbags, we're going to take a quick break to thank one of our sponsors, Lambert Insurance Services. If you know Luke and I, you know we started this podcast to provide value to the construction industry. When we went to seek out an insurance company to work with, there's not a whole lot that are specific to the industry, and we really didn't want to work with a generalist agency, so we kind of put that on the back burner. Then we got to meet Sam Lambert. Sam is a fellow dirtbag himself. He's been in the industry for a long time, but he also started his insurance company in 2008 specifically for construction companies. So when we had that conversation, we knew that this would be the perfect match. So we started working with him, and he's been incredible. He leads first. He wants to be a resource first and an insurance agency second. They can help with provide general liability, workers' comp, commercial truck insurance, insurance for equipment, and so many more different avenues that he can provide coverage for. The great part about it is, they're licensed in most states, and they always quote through multiple companies,
including Progressive Commercial Insurance.
So that's how you know you can get a competitive rate. And even better, Sam, he's the owner. He wanted to provide his cell number just so if you have any questions, specifically from the dirtbags, you can always text him, give him a call, ask to compare plans, or just ask, what his rates would be, and then he can help direct you to the right place or answer your question from there. His number is 385-204-5799, or you can reach them at their website, which is lambert-ins.com. So reach out to him if you have any insurance questions. We're very excited about this partnership. Sam is an awesome guy, and we're just excited to continue providing value for all you dirtbags. So thank you, Lambert Insurance. Give him a text, shoot him a call, let him know that you're fans of the Dirtbags podcast. Let's get back to it.
So there's two reasons I picked the name Kestaa. One is that nobody in the US picks Finnish names for the company, so the domain's easy to get.
Very
All
fair.
that.
That's something to think about for sure.
It's worth thinking about. I don't know. The other thing is that Kestaa, it's a Finnish word for long-term or endurance. And one of the things that I have really come to value, I've had these experiences, maybe the last year or two, three, where I'm running into people, or I end up working with people who I met 7, 8, 10 years ago. And it's like made me stop and scratch my head and be like, so this is what it's like. Like this guy, Darren, who I met 8 years ago, is now a customer, or is now, we're working together, we're partnered up on something. And it's really like, I know 8 years is not long-term, that's not forever, but it's like not 10 minutes,
time.
which is how a lot of people seem to operate. And it's like, if I want to, offer something and want to be here, be around, I want to be here for a long time. And I want to offer services, solutions that help people be here for a long time. And so that's kind of how I came up with it. And the last thing I'll say is, like, I'm a big Cam Hanes fan, David Goggins, this kind of thing. Like, I think bits and pieces of what they say is really helpful. And Cam Hanes wrote a book called Endure. And that's it's not like my Bible, but it was really helpful to see like the 30-year time horizon. He started running 30 years ago and he's still running 30 years later. It's like, that's something to think about. Building things, whether it's habits, companies, friendships, relationships that last for a long, long, long time. That's really, really useful. So
yeah, I heard a quote. It's one of my favorites. It's from John Shahidi. He's one of the founders of Happy Dad and a bunch of other successful businesses. He always says life is long. Most people say life is short, and the why he says that, he means it in terms of business and relationships. Some people think, yeah, life is so short, like they're very short-sighted in business and their goals in their relationships. But he says life is long. Like you mentioned there, you're 29 years old and you're talking about relationships 8 years ago that you're now working with, and that is still short term. So just looking at life as it's long, and that doesn't mean you're not being grateful for every day and every sunset. It just means in terms of business and relationships, you know, look out a ways and just say, like, life is long. We're in it for the long haul here. So I think that also helps, like, with focus in business and really, keeping your eyes on what you're trying to do to run a successful business.
Yeah. Not to mention first impressions. If you met somebody 8 years ago and you're doing work with them now, obviously something you did or said really kind of stuck with them to there. We're like, hey, I remember Ben from 8 years. I'm going to call him and get his advice on this. So
sure.
Hell yeah. Cool. So services, what are you kind of specializing in with Kestaa right now? Like what is your realm? What are you trying to go after? What's your target market?
So there's two things that I'll talk about. I'll talk about my service offering, like if I go work one-on-one with a company, and then I also want to mention these peer groups that are starting to take off, putting together these contractor peer groups. So first, these, like, what do I actually do? What do we do at Kestaa? It's me, and you can hire me, and I go work primarily with dirt contractors, excavation, utilities, pipeline work, landscaping, because that's who I know. That's all my friends. That's that's my jam. And I came up in landscaping. I spent 4 years on a Mini X, and I know my way around a job site, I guess. So it's like an easy fit. One of the biggest things that I have seen that companies in the 1 million or even sub 1 million to 5 million, some even bigger than that, they don't have a good handle on their costs and what it takes to actually get jobs done.
Yeah.
And businesses and it's like this revolving door. So they bid the project, they get the project, they do the project, they build the project, and they bid the next one. Mm-hmm. So there's typically cash in the bank, and then a lot of times there's not, but there's not like a rhyme or reason to it, and there's not a guarantee or a system in place for guaranteeing cash flow or guaranteeing that you're making money on your projects. So my offer, my idea is very simple: help contractors get a little better handle on their job costs so that they know whether or not they're making money on projects. And when they can do that, it informs tomorrow's estimate.
So when you're doing that, right, say you take on a client, and they're like, hey, Ben, we want to dive into this estimate with you. Can you look this over with us before we send it out to see if we're on par? Or is it like, hey, we have all these jobs lined up. Can you give us some key, like, organizational items that'll help us maybe get through it a little bit? Like, what does that look like?
So it's the latter. What I've found is, and this is my approach, but what I found is it doesn't do a ton of good to stare at an estimate and decide in your head whether or not this is a good estimate or a bad estimate. You're not going to know until you put it out and you see what your ranking was. But you can do something about the jobs that you already have, the jobs that you're going to start. And so, like a contractor I'm working with right now from down south, they do a handful of million a year. And what we're working on is let's put a simple system in place so that you can start tracking your costs on these projects.
Mhm.
And I start with four simple buckets. Man hours, so track your man hours, equipment hours, materials on the project, and your subcontractors. And if you can just start there, I made a post about this today. It's like, how can you start the simplest way and start to get some of this information that you can then take back and now use that against future estimates.
Yeah.
So we start by tracking that, and there's a million softwares that you can go buy and be part of this. I know you guys, Jobber, one of my contractors, they use Jobber. There's lots and lots, Busy. I've recommended that and have had people use that. There's obviously for the bigger guys, there's HCSS and Bid to Win and all these stuff, all these different softwares and stuff. But it's like, even if it's a spreadsheet or a Google form that you fill out every day, or if it's literally writing on a piece of paper, whatever it takes to get you started, start tracking those four key areas. Start tracking man hours against a project, track your subcontract or your equipment hours, your materials, and your subcontractors. And that's going to give you at least a better picture on how you're doing on projects.
Is there and either of you, I guess, could answer this maybe, is there a target percentage we're looking to hit when you group all four of those together, or are you looking to individually have a percentage for each of those?
Luke, I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, great question, Luke. I feel like that comes down to your bidding, right? Because there isn't a number that we want to hit as far as like equipment hours. There's utilization rates and then like overages that you try to plan for. But how we bid it is all based on time. We break it down into sections of the project. Okay, there's mobilization, there's our clearing and grubbing, there's our earthwork, there's our utilities, there's our backfill. And then from those subsections, we break it down, excavator cost, what machines are we going to use, those costs, the labor hours, if there's any trucking, if we have any materials, and then we add in our time based on, the excavation hours, the labor hours, the dozer hours, and then we have our unit cost and then our marked up cost. And then our marked up cost is what we bid off of, basically.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
it broken down maybe, but that's something that we've never done.
It seems like it's super dependent on the kind of project too,
Mhm.
because if you're gonna take equipment, for example, you might be really equipment heavy on one project and then have almost no equipment on another project, and you're doing a lot more intricate, pipeline work or whatever. The percentages, I don't know that it's fair to put percentages on it like that. It's like a project by project. Now, could you do some kind of round numbers to give you an idea,
Right.
based on the kind of project? Probably, and maybe we should do that sometime. But
Oh, good question, Luke.
profit percentage.
Yeah.
That's it.
Cool. So let's dive right into that. The profit. I'm sure you deal with this a lot, and you talk about a lot of just, revenues for show, profits for dough or whatever. Like that's what we need to pull out of the business at some point down the road. What's your experience been with, dealing with top line revenue to gross profit to net profit, like working with construction companies? What do you typically see? Where is the leak typically with these companies? I don't know. What have you seen working with companies?
So I'd be very curious to hear what Luke has to say from experience, but this is my lens on it. This is what I've seen. Is the leaks, as you say, the leaks can be all over. The immediate with all my customers and people in the industry, it seems like the immediate place they go is to production. So let's go get these production hours down so we can make more money. And you talk about COGS versus gross profit, maybe completely ignoring the gross profit and the fancy shop and the bunch of people on payroll sitting around in the office all day, where I've seen companies running 25 people in the field and 2 people in the office.
Yeah.
where somebody else runs 5 people in the office and 7 people in the field. And it's like those people in the field have to make the money to pay for the office and the nice trucks and all of that. So I would not, there's, I suppose, probably trends there too, but I would say the leaks are because people maybe aren't being honest with themselves about how they're spending their money, where they're spending their money, or like the business cash flows a lot, right? So there's maybe they do a couple million a year or 5 million a year. There's always money moving through those accounts. And so it's like, I do 5 million. I should be able to buy a $80,000 truck. Obviously, like I run a company that does 5 million a year, but those two things are like apples and oranges. Those aren't related, you know? So getting a handle on how much money is actually left in the bank, like, so to speak, that's the one area that and I'll share some ideas that I've picked up that can be helpful, but that's like everything else, like you can kind of push it to the side and just be honest about where is your money? Like, how are you making it?
Yeah. Do you think, and before you get into your ideas, do you think a lot of it is reactive finances compared to proactive? Like, for example, if somebody works with an accountant and at the end of the year, they're like, hey, yeah, you had 120K net profit. And then the owner's like, well, where's the money? Do you think it's more reactive? Because I feel like I see that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. 100%, 100%. From what I've seen. I would also say that, like you're saying, where's the money? Okay, you made 120 grand. Where's the money? It's like there's accountants and there's people that are went to school for 6 years to learn about all this stuff. I'm just a redneck with a couple ideas, but these people, like, it would be surprising to you, or maybe it wouldn't, the amount of accountants or CPAs that can tell you the numbers, can tell you what the spreadsheet says, but don't actually understand what's going on in the business and how cash flow operates and works. It's astounding. So you have people talking 2 different languages, and the contractor ends up leaving the CPA's office angry, and the CPA is like, I don't know what the deal is. I think that's
no
where
strategy to speak to your point, but there's no strategy from a lot of these tax accountants because they're a firm. They service all sorts of different clients to where they're looking at the numbers, right? But when I'm actually dealing with this right now with our accountants. There's no strategy leading up from like a monthly meeting. They look at the numbers. Okay, here's what's been deposited. Here's what you got. Here's what you spent. Well, no, that's not it, because we're actually 45 days on one of these bills, we're 60 on another, and those were accounted for on the internals, but you guys aren't accounting that. You're accounting what's been deposited. And with those meetings, there is no strategy as far as like what are things to look out for, what are things that you need to keep in the back of your head, things like that, if that makes sense, to speak to that point. But yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was like, I'm resonating with this because we were going through the same shit.
Yeah. So let's dive into those ideas that you had and some simple strategies that people can use, especially people that are listening. I feel like they're right in this market of the 1 to 5. So what are some tangible strategies and tactics that you'd recommend?
So I would love to take credit for these next things, but I can't and won't, because I did not think up any of this stuff. But I've noticed also, and I noticed this with myself, my wife and I, our finances, and now the business, and I've noticed it with lots of other companies. Just because you have information doesn't mean that you make change. And so my encouragement is, like, I'll share some ideas. You have to do something for it to be useful or worthwhile. So here's the idea. If you have not read the book Profit First or Profit First for Contractors, 2 different books.
I had that written down. I was going to talk to you about that. Damn it.
Dude, if you have not read the book Profit First or Profit First for Contractors, two different books, two different authors, but they're kind of partnered up. They hold the keys to your answers to all the questions that you have about why you're not making money, where is my money, and they're in very simple, easy to read books. So because 99 out of 100 people that listen to this won't actually go read those books, let me give you the nickel version for at least a start. So drive down to your bank once you're done listening to this. And what you're going to do is you're going to open up these separate accounts. You're going to open up 4 different accounts within your business. So right now, the majority of the people listening to this, they have one operating expense account that they deposit checks into, and they pay out all their payroll, and they pay all their taxes, and they pay everything. And then they deposit more checks, and that's how it goes. My encouragement and what Profit First is going to tell you, at least the very, very simple version, is go down to your bank and you're going to open up 3 more accounts. So you have your single account, your checking account, you have debit cards and all that for that account. And then you're going to open up a second account. It's going to be called tax. You're going to open up a third one called owner pay, and then a fourth one called profit. And the book or either one of the books will go through percentages on basically either on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, or if it helps, every check that comes in, every check that you deposit, you'll split up into those different accounts by profit percentage, or excuse me, by the percentage. So right now, for simplicity, you have 100% of every check goes into operating expenses. But if you set up these 3 other accounts, maybe you have 20% that goes into tax. Again, just round numbers. 20% for tax. You have 5% for owner's pay. And you have 5% for profit. So what that leaves you is 70% left in this big operating expense account. So you can look back at your what you've paid in taxes against what you've earned and kind of get a better idea. It might not be 20%, might be 30, might be 18. I'm not sure. But you're going to move some of that money every time you deposit a check, or every week, every month, every 2 weeks. You'll move those percentages of all the checks deposited into that operating account. You move into these 3 other accounts based on the percentage. So if you deposit a $100,000 check, you're going to move 20 grand into taxes, 5 grand into owner's pay, 5 grand into profit. Now, if you don't have the money, that's your business screaming at you saying you need to solve other issues, production issues, estimating issues, tracking costs better. So that's the maybe overly simplistic version of Profit First. But the idea is you set up these accounts, you start running these accounts, and then over time you can grow that percentage. So maybe your owner's pay, you may give yourself a raise. You go from 5% to 7%, or your profit goes from 1% to 2% over time. And you revisit that every quarter, and you start to grow those percentages as you get a better handle on how you're actually operating.
Yeah,
How did I explain that? Is that
they call
That's good. Really
yeah,
good.
they call it like the goldfish theory too, where if you have the one checking account where all the money flows into, and you allow yourself, if you have a 200K in there, you'll allow yourself to spend 200K. It's like the goldfish will grow as the size of the bowl. And so what Profit First does is you only have a certain amount of operating expenses to spend. And so maybe that's 55% or 75%, like you said, and it'll probably be higher when you start out and your profit will be smaller. But the idea of it is there. And so we're actually implementing this in our business right now. Like I'm going through it today. And I've worked with other contractors that do it, and we've worked with other marketing agencies that do it. And so it's just, it was hard for me to get over the hump, and they actually talk about that in the book. And so part of it is, okay, Ben, this all sounds great, but I'm not going to go into my bank account and transfer every time I get a check to these 5 accounts. That sounds ridiculous. But I believe what I was reading today, it said to have a CPA or your tax accountant assign them to do it, so that you don't have to do it as the owner. And so, or in some cases, some people have done a VA that they trust.
Mhm.
So we're enacting that right now in our business. But like I said, we've worked with other contractors that have done it, and it's really helped them know how much they have to spend, but making sure that they pull out the profit first.
100%. Yeah.
Just walking myself through that. I'm trying to like put myself in that position. Very obviously it makes sense on how it goes, but in a contracting world, I'm just thinking here. You start a project, you wait 30 days to bill, and then it's usually a net 30, 40 days after that, right? Within those first 30 days, you're acquiring subcontractor bills, you're acquiring different your payroll bills, your equipment, your machinery. What do you do in the sense for having, say we start the project on the 1st and payouts are due on the 25th? Well, say I have a material supplier that drops off material on the 15th, and to them it's a net 30. And if I haven't been paid for it, I'm just trying to think, how does that work? What account would that come out of? If it comes out of your operating, how do you figure that in for unforeseens in the future as well? And obviously, like you said, it's a very simple kind of understanding of it, but I'm just trying to relate it to how it would work in, a, I don't want to call us a bigger contractor, but in like a bigger size contracting firm to where, like you said, money is always in, it's always out, and you're waiting on those payups to come in.
Yeah. What I would say is and I think he talks about this in the book. You start, the point is to start tiny.
Yep.
So I think the recommendation actually in the book and what I started with personally years ago was the profit account is 1%.
Okay.
99% of your business, almost everything is exactly as it always has been.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But you're putting away 1% into that profit account.
Okay.
And his point is, if you can't run your business with pay apps, with all these vendors and things, and you're not getting paid, so cash flow is an issue. If you can't run it on 99%, you sure as heck can't run it on 100%.
For sure.
And
that makes
so
sense.
that's what the book instructs. And I would say the same thing. You start with 1%, and then but you're looking at how do we increase the efficiency over here? How do we increase and make life easier on the operating expense account and truly grow this profit account so that we don't have to go dip back in again. You could be all gung ho and be like, I'm going 10%. We're going to be, we made 10% last year. I'm going to make 10% this year. That's my goal. But the first day you have to dip in and take half of that out in order to pay something to cash flow a project. It's super demoralizing.
For sure.
So start small and scale from there.
What's your advice? Say somebody can't operate on that 99%. What's the first part of the business that you look at? Is it their estimating? Is it their overhead? Like, what would you look at first? I'm curious because I hear people all the time on how we don't have any cash. So I'm like, well, this is probably why.
You said the two things. I would take a long, hard look at their overhead. So all things gross profit. And I would just stare at that sheet for like a while and look for all the many insidious things that are taking your money, from tiny subscriptions to payroll that you're paying to office people that don't belong there or you don't necessarily need anymore or shouldn't have hired, and cut that gross, cut your overhead as much as humanly possible. Because you can do that. Like if you're an owner of a
You can do that pretty easily.
Contracting, you can go on QuickBooks, get a P&L, and then stare at it. And then like you'll see big gaping holes. You're gonna see $16,000 in travel. What to where? How did that get there? $4,000 in subscriptions. What are those for? And then on and on and on. And if you just comb through that like for an hour, you're gonna see things that you can immediately get up from your desk and go and fix. So that's where I would start.
Luke, I'm cutting you off again.
No, I'm good. That would have taken me an extra second to work up anyway.
That's okay. So after you go, you take a look at your P&L. What would be next? Do you look at your overhead as far as like equipment, and then you start diving into like utilization of those pieces? Because one big misconception I feel like in the construction world right now is, oh, well, my payment on this piece is 7 grand, and to rent it, it's 15 grand. But what are my utilization rates based on? That's one thing that we're really diving into in our business right now, is what makes sense to own and what doesn't. What makes sense to rent compared to what makes sense to own, and what do those utilization targets have to be?
So if it was just me going in, like if you were a customer and we're gonna go tackle this issue, I can't run my business on 100%
Mhm.
or 99% of my revenue.
Mhm.
I would, while I think utilization is a big part of that, and like getting rid of a $7,000 a month payment on a big excavator, that could be really, really, really useful.
Mhm.
But I would start by looking at estimating versus how jobs are actually being
More
tracked.
so on the internal process, you would start
That
first. Okay.
because you're going to do the job either way, and
Yeah.
I think it's probably gonna it's not like you're going to get all your utilization questions answered by looking at your projects.
Nope.
But if you can, again, like, I wish I could explain this some simpler way. It's like, write it on a piece of paper. How many man hours went into this project? How long did the excavator stay on? How long is it running?
Yep.
What was our material costs? If you can write those down and then look at your estimate and say, this was 16 grand, or this was 120 grand, and this was 106 grand, we got a problem, Like, let's fix that first. But again, I suppose we're probably maybe looking at edge cases where it's like you're saying your scenario is you can't run your business on 100% of your operating, or 99% of your operating expense. Like, maybe that's an edge case. Maybe you can be a little more thoughtful.
Yep.
But that's where I would start, is start tracking what's going on projects.
Cool.
Yeah. And I've got one thing to say on that too. And I like where you're going with it. I'll push back a little bit and say what's helped me is I look at a pie graph of my expenses. And so, for example, if we made $0 in a month, I would look at a pie graph, which I do every month anyway, of expenses. And yes, I think it's great to look at, like you mentioned, travel and subscriptions and everything. But if that's 1.2% of my monthly expenses, like, I think the bigger pie to look at, which typically is labor and people, I think can get you a lot further, a lot quicker, because like, giving somebody the false sense of like they did something when they canceled their Netflix subscription, like there's probably a bigger problem to it. You know what I mean? And also, one thing I wanted to mention, and I'm sure you hear this or feel this, both you guys, but I think some people use I'm investing in my company as an excuse to just always be investing in their company and never have like a plan to bring anything home or like see a profit. And it's an easy thing to say, and we all do it, but I think there's a way to do it the right way, where there's that plan to be profitable and to bring something home eventually.
Yeah, I would agree. It kind of goes to the point of knowing where your dollars are, Ben. Like you said, like, you do 5 million a year, I deserve an $80,000 pickup. Fuck it, that's right up my wheelhouse. But then if there is no plan, no, it's not. And I feel there's a big misconnection, I feel like, on that end, because I do accredit that to social media too. I do feel like everyone tries to
100%, dude.
keep up with the Joneses, like, hey, I got the latest, greatest. Check out my brand new excavator, whatever the case may be. And I feel like that's, it's not good. That's for sure. But
Agreed.
no, good points. I didn't mean to like take the spotlight and ask those questions, but there has been calls that I've gotten and they're like, Luke, we don't have any money. Like, what? It seems like you guys are killing it. What do you do? And I'm like, well, social media tells a different story than what's actually in real life. Everybody struggles at some point, but it's just like, how do you not have any money? What do you mean you don't have any money?
Yeah.
But it's cool to dive into that.
I think, and I don't mean to keep going back to their book, but in the Profit First book, he makes the point that people are asking the wrong question. They ask the big question: how big is your business?
Yeah.
Right.
And the point is that's the wrong question. The question is, how healthy is your business?
No, that's a good question to ask.
My favorite is where they say like, how many employees do you have? Like that's a yardstick measuring of like how successful you are. I'm like, that says nothing about the health of your business, like you mentioned there.
Yep.
Yeah. No,
Agreed.
no, that's cool. So Kestaa, are you actively taking on new clients right now? Like, are you searching for more? Like, what is your book of business right now? You mentioned peer groups too. What does that look like for you?
Yeah.
What are you trying to set up on that end? That's interesting.
Yeah. So with Kestaa, I'm working with a pretty good handful, 5 or 6 contractors right now. I have room for 1 or 2 more, but I'm not looking to explode that or anything. I have lots of people in my network. Like we're good. But I'm open to chatting with a few others, and I have a few conversations going. So,
Cool.
but that's rolling right along. The peer groups, I put this post out that maybe you guys saw it a couple weeks ago, but I put this post out because I got this call from a contractor out east, and he's like, I really think you should look at doing these peer groups. And I'm like, okay, yeah, tell me more. We get to talking, and then I call a few other people the next day, and I'm like, what do you guys think about this? And it's like, yeah, this would be useful. So I put this post up, like, hey, I'm considering starting this contractor peer group. So, or maybe a couple eventually based on size of the company, so we don't have tiny companies with massive companies and that kind of thing. And I'm just putting my feelers out. Like, if people want me to do it, I'll do it. This is kind of what I'm thinking. Meet twice a year, go out to locations so we can do kind of an audit on the host company and then debrief and help them get better, but then also talk about more general like agenda topics, things that people want to know. Everything from you're asking about equipment utilization. How cool would it be to have a conversation with 8 contractors, roughly your same size, some a little bigger, some a little smaller, but from all over the country, people that aren't your direct competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if you could have an hour-long conversation about utilization to understand how these 8 different contractors do that, how they track that, when to rent versus lease versus buy and sell, and how they're handling it. Like, wouldn't that be useful?
Oh, absolutely.
And so point is, I put this post out, and I'm like, what do you guys think? If you don't want me to do it, I won't. If you do, then I'll take a look at it. And it was like a tidal wave. Like,
Really?
you can go look at my LinkedIn and see 60, 70 comments, but then my DMs, people calling, texting, like, hey, do it, go.
Sign me up.
And I'm like, okay. So next step, the next day I put out this post saying, I have this like little form thing that you can fill out to kind of give your feedback, advice, help me shape this thing. And then like over the next week, almost 70 people filled it out.
Wow.
And it's like, you get 70 contractors doing anything?
Yeah, dude,
Like,
that's crazy.
It's quite impressive. I've just been like blown away by it. And so long story short is I'm like, I'm just gonna go and we're gonna host the first one and then we'll see how it goes. So the overwhelming feedback was keep the group small, none of this 25, 50 people. It just gets too big, it's too hard to manage, it's too hard to have really useful conversations. So keep the group smaller, even if you have to charge more, like keep it smaller and really help those people connect and build useful for relationships. Because if someone's a contractor in North Dakota can learn from a contractor in Texas and Louisiana and Connecticut, that can be very, very useful, especially if those contractors are maybe a couple steps ahead and have dealt with some of the stuff that you've dealt with.
Absolutely.
So I'm like, roger that, we'll go. So the May 16th, 17th, we'll be in Ohio. I already have the group all locked in. Everyone's good to go. And kind of the way it works is we'll have 8 folks for 2 days. the first half day, we're going to go out to location. We're I hope he doesn't mind. We're meeting at Kingsway. So they're a paving contractor and they do some dirt work as well. We're going to meet there. We'll rummage through his office, go look at all his systems, everything. Hopefully he has a job going nearby that we can zip out to and go see the operation. And then in the afternoon, we'll debrief. He's going to have 7 other contractors that are in the kind of $4 to kind of $13 million range. So there's a spread, but it's not like a chasm.
Right.
And they're going to give feedback. And then the second day is going to be about general topics. I'm sending out a poll saying, what do you guys want to talk about? What else is useful? And then the little known fact that probably by the time this airs, I'll have let folks know, but I'm also bringing in, so I'm stoked about this. There's you can look at my survey and you can see how many contractors, like everyone, it doesn't matter if they're a $2 million contractor or a $50 million contractor. And I have all of them and way bigger. Everyone says, I want to learn from people who are ahead of me. I want to learn from people who are bigger than me, which makes sense, right? Like, hey, you've been here and done this, got the t-shirt. Let me see what's possible. And so I didn't want to mix the $600 million guy with the $300,000 guy because the $600 million guy is like, the heck, why did I pay to be here?
Yeah.
You know, I'm somebody's mentor now. Instead, I'm bringing in a contractor who does just above this range. He's like a few steps ahead in a few areas. He treats his people super well. I've spent multiple days at his office. We've gone out on his job sites. He makes a fantastic margin, and he's coming in as kind of like the mentor to these folks for the second day to help like be that guy, kind of be the anchor,
Answer the questions that they have.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
this is breaking news, technically.
That's right.
It is.
That's
We're putting this episode out tomorrow. No, I'm kidding.
I got some work to do.
Dude, so that's amazing. I love that idea.
That's really cool.
Luke and I have even talked about stuff like that. We just haven't taken the bull by the horns, but Luke, you've done something kind of similar, more unofficial with like your guys when you go out snowmobiling and stuff. Just that round table of like getting together with the boys.
A fun group of guys. Yeah. I mean, that's very unprofessional setting.
For
and
sure.
You're there to have fun. I mean,
you and Will Schuler on snowmobiles.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're there to have a good time. Little backstory on that. You know, we went out, we stayed at this Airbnb. This Airbnb had a lock on their hot tub. What did we do? We cut the lock off. We ordered one on Amazon and threw it back on when we left. You know, so that's the type of shit that we'll do. But no, that's super cool. Obviously, I feel like there's a huge movement as far as like education. People they're almost like starving to learn more and more and more, which is really cool. The accessibility is out there a lot more as well, and people are a lot more open to it. So good for you for taking the bull by the horns and just saying, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
If you don't mind me asking, what does pricing look for that to be part of these peer groups?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. So I'm trying to figure that out. What I mean is, like this first one, this very first meeting, I'm giving them a cut, and we're gonna basically in return, they're gonna spend an hour or two on camera at the end talking about how did this go? What did you learn? What are you looking forward to? What are you gonna implement? That kind of thing. This is really helpful for me. Like I can't just invent that. I gotta go get that. So I'm investing. I see it as kind of like this investment in let me go get the testimonials from people and show that it's not just a total joke.
Yeah.
That said, so I'm planning to host probably June, July. I'll host one for kind of smaller contractors, so the $1 to $3 million range, and then one for larger, like 10 to maybe 25, something in that range. So 2 more groups, probably 8 to 10 people in each group, and I expect that the pricing on that will probably be $6,000 for the year. So what they get is two meetings, so 2 2-day meetings, and then I'm linking them up. Everyone will be in the same group online. There'll be a monthly call with the group that you can join, that kind of thing. The odds of the price going up are really strong. Like I think it's going to get a lot more expensive as it gets more valuable.
It should, yeah.
If I go out swinging and I'm like, hey, yeah, we got to get you guys in here. Also, it's 20 grand. It's like, I don't have any track record. I got to prove to these
Yeah.
people this was worthwhile. And so that's what I'm trying to do. So for the first year, it's probably 6 or 8 grand for these first couple of groups. But like, based on what I'm seeing, like, I think it's not only going to get more pricey, I think it's going to get way more valuable.
Yeah.
Like, crazy valuable.
Dude,
Because I
and
know who's coming. I know the people that are coming, they're dynamite contractors.
and scarcity too. Like if you have 8 positions open, it becomes more and more valuable. And it's like, damn, that just because it's not open to everyone, like makes it more valuable. One thing I wanted to ask on that is, I guess for one, how are you paying for it? It probably from the tickets, but 2, are you looking for sponsors? Because I feel like this is a perfect one to have a sponsor come in, help pay for lunch, or like, are you doing anything like that? Are you looking for anyone in the industry?
So your first question, yes, like they're going to pay the ticket, that they'll buy the ticket, or they'll be, signed up, and then I'll buy everything, all they have to do is show up.
Gotcha.
And I'll pay for the room and the food and all that jazz. Sponsors, I've had again, a surprising number of people reach out and say exactly what you said. I'll buy lunch. We'd love to be involved. Every single one I've said, no, not yet, or no, not now. Because it's like so early, and I have a lot to, if I feel like, and this might be my own, whatever, insecurities. I feel like I have a lot to prove before I go get a sponsor and I get these contractors involved and all this stuff. I just want it to be so good that people like are like, I don't know how I did this without this. Like, that's what I'm aiming for, is like these relationships that I help connect people, like that they're like, I wouldn't want it any other way. I haven't thought twice about the money. And so to me, it's like to have somebody come in and buy Chick-fil-A for everybody for lunch. It's a detail, and it would be awesome to have people involved and have these vendors involved and stuff, but it's not priority right now for these first ones. So that's just how I'm looking at it. Again, maybe it's my own stuff, but I just want to make it super duper valuable first.
Yeah. No, I definitely hear where you're coming from there. I guess last thing on that, I just would say don't sell yourself short, because I think people love what you're doing. They love what you're putting out there. And obviously the response from this is insane. And I think
Incredible.
Even if it's not lunch, if it's like, $500 or a $2,500 like sponsorship just to help out the industry, I wouldn't be surprised one bit that you have a line out the door of people that want to help out, and they don't want you to wear the burden of like some of the expenses. But but yeah, I totally respect too that you want to prove it first, have the videos, have everything kind of dialed in. But yeah, man, that is so cool. I'm not surprised that you're doing something like that. That is just like awesome to hear. And I've talked to already a few people that I know that have talked to you about it, and they're stoked, and they've been telling me about it. So that's awesome.
Love to hear it.
Cool. No, that's exciting stuff, man. I mean, very creative, right? Just for getting people together, having them open up and be vulnerable with other people that might not be their direct competition, but just the willingness to help and want to learn, I think, is probably the coolest point to that.
It's been crazy to see. There's contractors all over the place that I get to talk to. I have their cell phone number, and I have the privilege to chat with them. And people are just wide open. But then it's occurred to me many times in the last, even the last few weeks, as I'm starting to like build this and see the response. And it's like, they don't have other people they can just call up.
Yeah.
Like, look, you have you go snowmobiling with Will. That's probably very, very helpful. You can chat with him and talk about, equipment utilization with him. That's awesome. But how many people don't have that? It's like, I would say the majority of people have no one to turn to. Like, so I think it's gonna be super duper useful.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm anxious to follow along. That's for sure. When those groups come out, I got to sign up for the next one. So if you put out another post, Ben, and you're like, yep, contractor sign up, shoot me a text, maybe like 5 minutes prior, and then I'll send you our sign up first. So
Yeah.
Perfect.
And if you need somebody to hand out the Subway sandwiches, let me know, 'cause I'll be there.
I got Edgar Broughton on the Chick-fil-A
Yeah.
duty. Let's go.
I'll be there. I'm not a contractor, but I can hand out some sandwiches.
hell yeah.
Oh,
Hell
good
yeah.
stuff. All right,
No, I
boys.
love
Well,
it.
I think that's a wrap on the episode. Dude, we can't thank you enough for being
Thank
on.
you, man.
There's a reason we were excited for this one, but we just thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story and sharing everything. But I think there's a ton of value that you threw out there. I guess lastly, like if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you? How can they follow along? What would you prefer there?
This will be no surprise to you guys, but LinkedIn is perfect. Find me on LinkedIn, just my name, Benjamin Holmgren, and I'd love to connect there.
Sweet.
man.
Good stuff. All right, boys. Well, that's a wrap on the episode. We appreciate it, man. And
Thanks,
we'll see you
Ben.
guys on the next one.
Thank you
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Appreciate it.